when people talk about true Jedi, a lot of times they like to give examples like Qui-Gon Jinn or Luke Skywalker. But I just want to start with like classifying the three opinions that I see most often. The first one is they don't care. This is like pretty much most people, I would assume. Um, People who haven't finished Star Wars don't care. People who are just casual fans don't care. There's probably a whole bunch of hardcore fans who just don't care, and they're more interested in the ships, or they're more interested in the specific characters, and they judge things on an instant by instant. They don't ask what is the ultimate right and wrong. They just ask what is the right and wrong in this situation. Then there's this. Then there's the second kind, or the second major belief, and that is a true Jedi uses the light side and the dark side. And then there's the third belief, which is a true Jedi uses just the light side, but not like the Jedi in the prequels. It seems the one thing that everyone can agree on is the Jedi of the prequels were flawed. Which, yes, I also agree with this. I am part of the third group, so I'll try and like present them as biased, but also give arguments as to why my opinion is correct. If I couldn't do that, then why would I choose that side, right? So I'm going to choose that side. So a lot of times when people give examples, they say like Qui-Gon, Luke Skywalker, Anakin. I also like to give like Yoda, Ahsoka, Plo Koon, even Luminara to some extent. Although many people would probably say Luminara doesn't deserve that. Obi-Wan as well, and a lot of these are represented on the screen. You can see Aayla Secura's and Ki-Adi-Mundi there as well. And frankly, I don't know those Jedi as well. But here is how I would describe a true Jedi: is selfless, and there's not really a good word for it. It's like peace, but it's like an inner peace, but it's also like a like basically like a negotiations rather than fighting, but it's also, yeah, it's this weird concept that I can't quite put into words, but I think the closest word to it is peace. But it's not like they're like hippies, they're Jedi, right? Like, it's honor, it's an honorable peace, and an inner peace and a confidence. One important thing to note is their confidence, because fear is the path to the dark side. And so when people talk about the true Jedi being both dark side and light side, I don't know. You know what? Leave your thoughts about that. If you believe that, or I should say, especially if you believe that Jedi or really just the balance in the Force means that you need to use both the light side and the dark side. Leave why you believe that and what you think that exactly means in the comments or in the chat. But for now, I just want to talk about the idea of a true Jedi that I have. Basically, this is someone who is selfless. So instead of, and the other thing is, their inner peace also applies to like attachment. So they're not like attached to anything. They're confident. Like, I don't know how to explain it. They don't have attachments. Attachments are forbidden, and that's not to say that you can't love things, or kind of. Your compassion is encouraged, and I love this scene in Attack of the Clones when Anakin is explaining to Padme, and he's like, well, you know, attachments, they're forbidden, but compassion, which I would define as unconditional love, is encouraged, because it's essential to a Jedi's life, which is true. And also, if you pay attention and understand the meaning of that, or at least what I believe the meaning of that is, then you see that his relationship with Padme is actually not allowed. By compassion being unconditional love, what that means is that it's not conditional. It's not like, oh, you're pretty like Padme, I will like you more. Or, oh, you're a great friend like Obi-Wan, I'll like you more. Or, oh, you're expensive and you're a cool house, I'll like you more. And, you know, like, Jedi don't have attachments to worldly possessions, to people. And of course, that's kind of impossible. Jedi apprentices have masters. They have, like, the Jedi Temple, which is their home. They're going to be attached to stuff. But the point is, the ideal is no attachments, and at the very least, not letting their attachments control them. So I think, like, the Jedi shouldn't get so caught up on making sure that no one in the Order has attachments, or at least no attachments that they feel like they can't go without. For example, it's fine to have an attachment to your master because that's necessary, but it's not fine to have an attachment to your wife because that's not necessary. I feel like that's the wrong way to go about it. Instead of saying you can't have attachments, I should say, or I would advise, try to limit your attachments and make sure that they don't control you. And as I said during the Revenge of the Sith segment of the live stream, Yoda and Anakin, they talk about Anakin is having these visions of Padme, and Yoda's advice is learn to let go of everything you fear to lose. And so many people see or like hear this, and they're like, "That's such bad advice. How can you just tell him to let go? Like, how can you do that?" And well, that's the Jedi way, is letting go of your attachments so that they don't control you. So I don't know how people can say, "Well, that's just not possible." Like, that's the life of a Jedi isn't supposed to be easy. The point of being a Jedi isn't so that you can, like, I don't know, like, have a comfy life and have cool powers and lift rocks and stuff. It's a hard life where you make hard decisions. And in fact, in the Last Jedi novelization, Luke tells Rey that a Jedi would... So basically, here's the story. There's a group of raiders attacking these, like, villagers. It's like the weird fish villagers that you see repairing the Jedi temple stuff on Octo. And there's, like, they're raiding, and Rey's like, well, we gotta go stop them. And Luke is like, nope, a true Jedi would actually leave them. Because if you raid them, or if you stop them now, they're just gonna come back next week with an even greater force, with even more pillaging, and even more death, and even more suffering. And you're not gonna be here next week, so don't stop them. And well, it's kind of portrayed in the book like that's the wrong opinion, but that's the right opinion. Like, sure, you're preventing short-term suffering, but by preventing that short-term suffering, you're causing an even greater long-term suffering. So really, it is the right path, even though it's portrayed as the wrong path in the book. And I think that is or at least that's how I've always viewed the Jedi path as being, as always trying to, like, without any attachments, without any emotions, without bias, basically, you're trying to prevent suffering. So when Anakin is willing to sacrifice the entire Jedi Order, the entire Republic, all that stuff for Padme, that is the opposite of a true Jedi's choice. But when Yoda, or what's an example? When Qui-Gon is, I don't know, I can't think of a good choice. Let's say the only way to stop, like, a bomb or whatever is to sacrifice yourself. A Jedi would sacrifice themselves. But another thing to keep in mind, though, is Jedi, they have great powers, they have this great responsibility, but they have these great powers. So if they know they're going to use them selflessly, so if they get killed, it could be worse than having, like, 2 other people get killed. So there is that to keep in mind as well. Because those 2 other people could cause harm and they could cause good. So I do think that a true Jedi isn't like they're going to just sacrifice themselves for anything. But they will sacrifice themselves if it's the logical choice. Which is why a Jedi can't be controlled by fear or attachments, because they're going to be blinded by their passions, they're going to be blinded by fear, they're not going to want to die if they're scared of dying, of course. And sometimes a sacrifice is the best choice. So Jedi can't be afraid, basically. And again, this isn't ideal. I don't think that, like, Luke wasn't scared of the Emperor when he threw his lightsaber aside. He just thought, well, this is the only way. Like, I can't take on the Emperor. I can't let myself turn to the dark side because I am the last of the Jedi. And frankly, I'm not quite sure if Anakin or if Luke's choice there was done in the Jedi way, even if it had a good result. I do think you could make an argument that it's not, or that it's a more gray Jedi approach. But you could also make the argument that he did do it out of larger choice, which is that, well, he can't take on the Emperor, If he kills Darth Vader, that's not going to get him anywhere. His only choice is to hope that Vader turns on the Emperor, which eventually, of course, works. Um, another thing about the Jedi is it's not just their peace. It's I already kind of talked about that. Peace and selflessness, basically, and lack of fear, I guess. And that's what makes up a Jedi. A Jedi, as I was saying, is willing to sacrifice themselves, and you can't do that if you're selfish. You can't do that if you're not at peace, if you have attachments, and that's why Jedi aren't supposed to have those. Contrast that to the Sith, who are selfish and passionate, and often they are controlled by fear, like Anakin was. That's how he turned to the dark side. Like Maul was. You see him like super afraid of his master, all that kind of stuff. You often see Sith like convincing people to turn to the dark side through torture, and that's ultimately driving them through fear of torture. You also see them doing it through pain, which obviously causes an emotional response. You see them do it through vengeance, which I think Maul is like the picture of vengeance. So maybe I should have called this segment, "What is a true Jedi and a true Sith?" But I feel like just saying true Jedi is better. But I really need to talk about Sith to contrast that to what a true Jedi is. Not only are Sith passionate and controlled by fear and anger and all that, they're also controlled by selfishness. Jedi, they're selfless. Like, if it's not in their best interest to sacrifice themselves to save an entire planet. However, if they're not thinking about themselves, or at least the ideal is that they're not. So sacrificing themselves for the planet makes logical sense. However, a Sith wouldn't do that. They would think only of themselves. Again, Anakin speaks a great truth when talking to Palpatine in Episode 3 with the opera scene about Darth Plagueis. And, well, Darth Sidious is like, well, what's really the difference between the Sith and the Jedi? They're basically the same thing, right? Or maybe it's not the opera scene. But whenever it is, Anakin says, well, the Sith are selfless. They think inward, only of themselves. And that's one of the main points, is that Sith don't think about others, they think only about themselves. So, all this is to say, this is what, like, a true Jedi is three things. Selfless, peaceful, and, what's the last one? Brave. Whereas Sith are the opposite. They're selfish, passionate, and driven by fear, which I guess is part of their passion. Contrast that to, like, the gray Jedi idea, which is that Jedi are somehow selfish and selfless, which, again, people say, oh, you can't be selfless because if you did that, then you wouldn't be able to eat and you would die, right? Because you're not taking your own food. But it's actually selfish, or it's not that it's selfish, it's that it's not selfless to kill yourself if you have great power and you're taking on great responsibility, like a Jedi is supposed to be doing. It's actually in the best interest of most people if the Jedi survives. So it's not selfish to eat or whatever, or to preserve their own life, basically. Another counter to, like, the morality of the Jedi way is, like, their unemotionalness, how, like, they, like, don't feel anything, they don't have empathy, and it's not that they don't have empathy, it's that they're not controlled by it, which, just like in the villagers getting attacked by raiders example from The Last Jedi, like, that's, it might be a short-term benefit, like Rey wanted to do, which was fueled by her passion and her emotion, her sense of justice. That might be a short-term emotion, but stepping back, stepping out of your emotions, and thinking logically for a second, you realize that this isn't actually the best path. And so really you have more empathy, and instead of feeling yourself with something like passion, you feel yourself with something like logic, which I think is better even if it's hard and it seems cruel. Like, Jedi can seem very cold and dismissive. Like, some of them, like Mace Windu, even seem like downright cruel. Like, they're actively trying to like tear you down, which in the case of Anakin could actually be true. And quick theory on that: Mace Windu has like a purple lightsaber. He's very justice oriented. He's a very powerful Jedi. Some people have theorized that he thought that he was the chosen one. And he might not know who his parents are. He might think, oh, maybe my parents, maybe I don't have a father, like, it's possible. And then he might, like, consider himself, I could be the chosen one, and maybe not tell anybody that, or maybe just tell Yoda that. But deep down, he believes it. And then when Anakin shows up and is like, well, I'm the chosen one, guys, maybe that's why Windu is so, hard on him, because he thinks, this guy's taking my place. I'm the chosen one. And that's just a quick theory. It doesn't really have any supporting evidence. It's just a potential. I suppose the supporting evidence would be his unexplained rudeness towards Anakin. But yeah, just a quick theory to think on, I guess. But going back to how Jedi can be abrasive, Windu, Luminara, in what is it, the episodes 5 through 8 of the Clone Wars Season 7, Rafa and Tresa arc, I believe Rafa says that their parents were killed in a shuttle crash, and there was, I believe it was Luminara. I think she said a green-skinned Jedi or something. Anyways, some Jedi was forced to choose between crashing a ship on a huge landing pad with a bunch of people, or crashing it into a wall which had Rafa and Trace's parents on the other side, and she chose to kill the 2 people rather than the many people. And it's portrayed in the episode that's the wrong choice, or it's the bad thing. That is the right choice. And yet, because Luminara, or I believe it's Luminara, and this actually goes very well into Luminara's personality, because Luminara just goes up into them and is like, yeah, sorry, I had to make a choice, it was 2 or a whole bunch of people, so I chose the 2, right? Sorry, your parents are dead. That can seem really cruel, even if it's the best choice. That was her best choice. So then there's the whole problem with the prequel Jedi. What I've been talking about so far is the ideal of a true Jedi, and I contrasted that to the Sith, but you can also contrast it against the Jedi of the prequel era to kind of see some of the problems that they were having. And the biggest one is and at least this is the root of most of their problems, is, well, okay, there's two problems they have. Number one is their pride. They were very arrogant. They, as seen in their strategies with they just go in, they expect to win. They don't have any major threats for thousands of years, which I suppose the High Republic is going to change, which I'll actually be reading the High Republic book soon. I'm pretty excited, but I got to get through a whole bunch of other books first. I suppose I don't have to. I want to get through a whole bunch of other books first, because I have those ones from the library, and the High Republic one I can listen to whenever. I listen to them on audiobook, by the way. So yeah, I'll be probably doing a review of that pretty soon. Maybe after episode 4 next week, or maybe episode 5. Who knows? But I'll be doing a review of that pretty soon, hopefully. So the High Republic will probably change that. But the point is, they haven't had a major threat like the Sith in thousands of years. So their strategies have gotten a bit lax. They don't have the best strategies. And when they do have good strategies, it's not because they have these clever, thought out strategies like a good war general would have, or a trained war general. Instead, it's someone like Anakin comes up with this bold idea because he's got this bold personality. Their strategies aren't educated, formal, general strategies like Admiral Yularen or Tarkin or whatever. They're just very bold, very reliant on their Jedi powers, and sometimes just downright stupid. For example, in the Battle of Geonosis, they basically put all their clones in a line and say, go shoot. At least that's what it seems like. And if you want to learn more about Jedi strategies being dumb, I don't know if they have any dedicated videos about this, but the channel Generation Tech has a lot of Star Wars videos, and they often talk about how the Jedi aren't trained as generals, so they probably shouldn't have been put in the position of generals. But speaking of their position as generals, that goes into another problem of the Jedi Order, is the Clone Wars. Like, the Jedi are supposed to be peacemakers. Why are they fighting? But why are they generals in a war? And the reason is because they are too reliant on the Republic. Like, that's all they serve the Republic over the will of the Force. Some Jedi, of course, didn't, and it's kind of hard to say how many there is. But like Jedi, like Anakin, oftentimes would he'd serve himself sometimes too. Again, selfishness, a way of the Sith. But a lot of times he would serve the will of the Force, or the will. He would serve the Republic, but he would do it in maybe a different way. Jedi like Ahsoka learned from this and seemed to like adapt it more, especially after she left in season 5, I believe, of the Clone Wars. Maybe season 6, I don't remember. But anyways, Ahsoka seems to become seems to become more in tune with the Force after she leaves the Republic, and that's because the Jedi of the prequel era of the Clone Wars were too reliant on the Republic. They just listened to them for what they should do next instead of listening to the will of the Force. A Jedi like Qui-Gon Jinn seems to be, at least in the minds of most people, like the best example of a true Jedi, and I believe this is because he doesn't serve like the will of the Republic at all. He serves somewhat. I mean, Chancellor Valorum did ask him to go talk to the Trade Federation, and he did that. But he also like picks up slaves. He rescues Jar Jar. He does a lot of things that would be frowned upon by the Republic. And he does this because he follows the will of the Force, not the Republic, which I think is perhaps one of the biggest flaws of the Jedi of the prequel era. And because they served the Republic, they joined a war, which goes against most of their ideals. Instead of joining the war, they should have tried to solve the problems that the war was creating, those being obviously destruction, there wasn't really that much like conscription or anything, but there were probably a lot of economic problems and social problems that divide between the Separatists and the Republic. Instead of becoming generals, they could have become negotiators. That potentially could have ended the war. They should have investigated the origin of the clone army more. That's a pretty big mistake they made there. And it did cost them their fall. But yeah, it's just they were too reliant and too trusting of the Republic. One thing that I want to point out that often gets brought up against the Jedi is, in fact, it's brought up in The Last Jedi, is Luke is basically like, well, the Jedi aren't actually that good. For one, and I don't remember the other points, but one of the points he makes is, at the height of their powers, they let Darth Sidious take over the Republic, and they let themselves get destroyed. And that's not a very good point. For one, it doesn't address any morality point, and he's trying to convince Rey that the Jedi shouldn't exist for moral reasons. That doesn't address any moral point, that just addresses the fact that they got defeated once. Two, that ignores the fact they were reigning for 1,000 years, and because they were reigning for 1,000 years, sure, they got comfortable, sure, they got reliant on the Republic, but if it hadn't been for the Sith, who had actually survived and been planning for 1,000 years, and maybe a few of their plans went wrong and they had to start over, but still, 1,000 years of refinement and planning, they had no chance. Like, maybe they could have, like, investigated the clone army more, maybe they could have done, maybe there's ways they could have gone around it, but Palpatine had so many contingency plans, they had basically no chance. So the Jedi didn't kill themselves as much as they got killed, and then, like, 20 years later, maybe 25 years later, they destroyed the Empire. Like, the reign of the Sith is like a blink of an eye compared to the reign of the Jedi. And that's, like, something that argument completely misses. Yeah, so I just wanted to, like, dispel that argument, because, I've heard it before in the comment sections, and it's brought up in a movie, and it just doesn't make any sense to me. So if you actually like believe that argument, and you still do after this, I'd love for you to chat and comment and basically explain why like the points I made don't make any sense. Because it's not that I like being proven wrong, but I like being right, or I should say correct. And if you can correct me, that would be great. So yeah, that the Jedi of the prequel era were too trusting of the Republic and too prideful. They got comfortable basically, and I kind of hope to see some of this start, and maybe like Jedi who aren't as prideful, or maybe aren't as reliant on the Republic, or maybe you start to see why they start to rely so much on the Republic in the High Republic area, or era, not area, kind of an area of time. Anyways, yeah, I'd love to see that in the High Republic. Excited to read that, and leave your thoughts about True Jedi. But before I stop talking about this, I do want to talk about who some of the True Jedi I think are. What I mentioned repeatedly, Qui-Gon Jinn. He follows the will of the Force. Obviously, he's not perfect. I believe there's something about him on Felucia or something that's alluded to. And that seems pretty un-Jedi-like, from what I can tell. But for the most part, he is striving after the ideal of a true Jedi. Another one that often gets brought up, and I mostly agree with, is Obi-Wan. And I do think he's too reliant on the Republic and maybe a bit prideful. I think he's convinced himself that he's humble, and because he thinks he's humble, he's being prideful about his humility, and that allows other areas. It allows him to become prideful in other areas. Another one that gets brought up often, mostly by me, I suppose, is Yoda. And I think Yoda is also somewhat prideful, but I think he also recognizes this, especially by the end of the Clone Wars. And I also think that he serves the will of the Republic a lot, but I feel like he's still better than most Jedi. Then there's another one I want to talk about, which is Luminara Unduli, and I don't think she's closer to a true Jedi than most of these that I'm going to mention. But she's interesting in that instead of following like the Jedi way, like Qui-Gon Jinn does, where she's following the spirit of the code, she's following like the Jedi code. Like she's very strict about the rules, which I think is interesting. Another one is Plo Koon, and he, I think, exemplifies especially the peace, and I think the peace and the bravery are kind of interlinked. It's like peace, honor, and bravery all mixed into one word, I guess, or one feeling. Like, yeah, it's like focusing on logic rather than on fear, anger, and like love, I guess. Love as in like specific biased love towards one person rather than compassion. And I think Plo Koon exemplifies this. He's always very calm. He's always very reassuring. Yeah. And then another Jedi I think is pretty close to a true Jedi, although I do think his true Jedi-ness is exaggerated, is Luke Skywalker. And I do want to add, from what we've seen, he doesn't seem to be super close to a true Jedi. At least in my opinion, how I see true Jedi. In The Last Jedi, obviously, he fell away from the Jedi Order. He does come back, and I think when he comes back, when he reasserts himself as Luke Skywalker the Legend, and in The Rise of Skywalker, I do think that he is very much like a true Jedi in many ways, especially in terms of his bravery, and even, yeah, pretty much in every way. He's selfless, and he has inner peace. He is brave, honorable, and motivated by compassion rather than passion. But before that, I don't think he's quite as Jedi-like as many portray him. For one, he almost turns to the dark side, but he overcomes that, and even though he overcomes that, and it shows great character growth, and it shows how much of a Jedi he's becoming, I don't think it shows that he is like a true Jedi. I just think he shows that despite struggling, he is still close enough to a Jedi to, say, be a Jedi. Another one I want to mention is Ahsoka Tano, and as I said earlier, she originally was just this apprentice, But after leaving the Jedi Order, she starts to sort of like detach from the Republic and sort of gain a closer connection to the will of the Force, and I think fix a lot of the problems with the prequel Jedi for herself specifically. So I think she is obviously brave and honorable. One thing I do think that she struggles with is letting go of her attachments to, say, Anakin. Um, for example, big one here is when Darth Vader, or when she's like, Darth Vader says that he killed Anakin, and she's like, then I'll have my revenge. And Vader responds, revenge is not the Jedi way. And Ahsoka says, I'm no Jedi. And I think in that instance, she let her attachments control her, which, you know, understandable. I certainly am not a perfect Jedi and don't expect anyone ever could be. But other than a few scenes like that and her attachments to really mostly just Anakin, but also to other characters like Lux Bonteri, Padme Amidala, um, the whole story arc with the Rebels of Onderon kind of showed a attachment to people. Obviously with Lux Bonteri, but also just with protecting the rebels with what's her name, Steela, I think, and Saw Gerrera. Yeah, that whole arc showed a bit of her flaws, but overall, I think she is pretty close to being a true Jedi. And most Jedi, I think, are close, but as a whole, they have these problems that Darth Sidious was able to exploit, and that is, of course, their pride. They aren't able to see that the Sith are returning and they're more powerful than them, or more powerful than they realized. If they just let go of their arrogance and truly thought for a second, why do we have this clone army? Like, where did we come from? If they if they thought, if they just took some time and away from their arrogance and thought, they might have been able to solve some stuff. And another one, if they didn't just rely so much on the Republic and only follow what the Republic said instead of following what the will of the Force said, then they probably wouldn't be able to be like destroyed as easily as they were during the Clone Wars. And I say easy. It took them 1,000 years to take out the Jedi. So that's what I think a true Jedi is. Compare that to the Sith. I compared it to the Jedi of the prequel era. I compared it to many of the most truest Jedi, I guess, of the time.